Hi guys, it's Steph from IDRIVEACLASSIC and today I'm back in something a little bit different and in my opinion really special, a 1960 Plymouth Fury. Now this might not look like the Plymouth Fury that you're imagining off the film Christine because they slightly changed it, and in 1960 for 1 year only they made this body shell with the biggest fins and the last Plymouth Fury to ever feature fins as well. So it's really exciting and I can't wait to take you around today because in the UK, this is a super rare car. And in fact, I think there's what, four, five? Not many. So it's really special to be able to take you out in this today. And it's a bit of well, it's a bit exciting really. So of course in this video, which might be slightly longer than usual because I'm massively fangirling over this car, we're going to take a look around the outside. I'm going to bring you inside, show you all the amazing detail, because although this was a car for the ordinary man, in my opinion it's extraordinary. And I'm even going to show you inside the boot as well, because if you're planning to do anything slightly suspicious, that boot room has enough for 3 large adults. It's amazing. And then I'm going to show you under the bonnet as well, because we've got a 5.2 V8 litre engine under there. We've got so much to look forward to. So let's go and have a look around the outside and begin this amazing car review. With this being our first Plymouth on the channel, I thought I'd talk to you a little bit about the manufacturer before we launched into a bit about the car. So Plymouth was launched all the way back in 1928, and it was designed to compete in an automotive market sector that was simply the lower price bracket. And at the time, this was really dominated by Ford and Chevrolet. And in fact, at first, Plymouth was simply one car instead of a standalone automotive brand, and the very first one was called the Plymouth Model Q coupe. So Plymouth initially priced their cars higher than the competition, but offered some of the standard features that buyers wanted, but Ford and Chevrolet just weren't providing, such as the expanding hydraulic brakes. Now, Plymouth sold through the Chrysler dealerships, and it filled a gap for aspiring motorists who wanted a Chrysler but couldn't really stretch the price. A little bit like British Leyland did with their brands, trying to offer alternative and a solution for every single budget, but all under one umbrella. So Plymouth cars were also available at DeSoto and Dodge dealerships, which of course all existed under the Chrysler division at the time. Now, really interestingly, Plymouth was actually the saving grace of Chrysler, because by serving that lower end of the market, it meant that both Plymouth and Chrysler survived the Depression of the 1930s, which actually saw the collapse of many other automotive brands. Plymouth continued to go from strength to strength and sold great quantities of cars, and in 1957 the new look forward design was advertised by Plymouth as "suddenly it's 1960", and this increased sales quantities by 200,000 cars compared to sales figures from 1956. And if you're watching in the UK and you're like, we weren't selling that many cars, the market was very different in America. However, as the decade ended and the swinging 60s began, build quality started to become a bit ropey, and Plymouth cars gained a bit of a reputation for iffy build quality, and this was coupled with a misjudged decision to downsize some of the cars from 1962, and it meant the brand saw a bit of a knocked reputation and success throughout the 60s and 70s. But for the automotive in automotive history, this wasn't really unusual, because you hear this about so many car manufacturers that era, especially British cars, which is why the Japanese car manufacturers really got that space to catch up and compete with merit. And guys, it really was every single brand, because even Ford had some duds in the 60s and 70s actually. Now, although it'd be lazy to just write this off and be like, oh, everything they did was rubbish in the 60s, 70s, that's not true, because they still have many success stories and triumphs, and the brand continued until 2001, whereby it was discontinued and any loose ends were tied up and neatly slotted back into the Chrysler division. Now, going back to the car that we see here today, the Plymouth Fury was produced from 1955 all the way through to 1989, but the model we're testing here today was only made in 60-61, so like 1 year of production. So when I refer to this car throughout the video as only being made for 1 year, it's this particular model I'm referring to and not the Fury overall. So the 1960 Plymouth Fury, as we see here today, was also known as the second generation car and was available as a 4-door sedan, or saloon as we'd call it, a 4-door hardtop, a 2-door hardtop and a 2-door convertible. Now, whilst it was one of Plymouth's best-selling cars, it was never sold in the UK, which might be because as a nation in the UK, we were just too conservative for something this spicy. Now, 1960 was also a year of firsts for Plymouth, because it was the first year of unibody construction and it was the first year for the Slant 6 engine. The new DuraQuiet body, which was known as the unibody, was said to be twice as strong as the previous body shells, and it was also said to steady the car on longer drives and faster speeds, and the gauge of the steel used was 75% heavier than the rivals without the added weight. So they basically said you get a better quality car, but we're not adding any extra weight, which for at the time was a real feat of engineering. Now, the car also sported a new handle and locking mechanism, which was tested for 4 years before launch, and every seam on the joint on the car was sealed. And Plymouth even went to the smallest minute detail and changed the window channel rubber materials to try and combat rust and corrosion. So this is light years ahead of what other manufacturers are doing, but people aren't having to pay the hugely inflated price tag. They even tested this with a 2-minute high water pressure water. So they got like this massive hose, which was meant to be akin to a tropical typhoon. The suspension system was the Plymouth torsion air suspension system, and the torsion bar to the front and wide leaf spring to the back combo, coupled with the new unibody, was said to give a better ride than any other Plymouth at the time of launch. It's also worth noting that the engine was mounted on its own suspension system too. Interestingly as well, they wanted to create a silent cabin ride, and when developing this, they set up 12 channel tape recorders on the test drives to find, eliminate, and tackle all sources of needless noise. And would you believe that even went right down to the ashtray? So they changed how that fitted into the car because they found that to be a source of noise. In fact, I could probably spend hours telling you all about the bits and pieces on this car, but we'd be here forever because in total, the engineers spent the equivalent of 20 years testing this car before launch. And quality wasn't all it offered because it offered incredible size too. It has a length of 209 inches, a width of 80 inches, and a wheelbase of 118 inches. For reference on our Driver Classic, that makes it bigger than the Bedford Bambi we tested last week by over 5 feet. Transmission units on these were varied, and you got a choice of 2-speed Power Flight automatic, the 3-speed Torque Flight automatic as we're testing here today, and a manual transmission option of a 3-speed synchro silent manual and a 3-speed manual. Now, there's so much that I want to tell you about this car that I'm really not going to have time to tell you, including about all the different engine choices and how they did all of that. However, Tom has sent me all the pages of the brochure. So if you'd like to read more about this, I'm actually going to upload these onto the iDriveAClassic Facebook page. And if you've not used Facebook before, you don't actually need a Facebook account to see this. And I'm going to put a link in the description below. And if you're hard of hearing and you're struggling, I have put some notes to accompany this video so you can catch up and you don't necessarily have to put the subtitles on. Now, this car is offering so much, but the real joy in this is when we go out on the test drive, because everything the manufacturer promises you'll be able to hear and see and experience on the test drive. Now, before we take this out, I wanted to have a chat with the owner, Tom, because of course he is the owner of this, and as well he imported this from the US and he did it without even seeing the car. So before we take this car out for a test drive and I walk you through the dash, let's have a chat with the owner, Tom. And although all the brochure information is going to be online for you guys to read, as well as your slant 6 engine, you've got your 5.2 litre V8 engine as we see here today, your 5.6 V8 litre engine, and your 6.3 and your 6.7 litre V8 engines as well. I mean, all the information is going to be on the brochure guide on Facebook. Again, there is a link in the bio. Now, I'm going to hand over to Tom because he's going to tell you all about this car and, weirdly, buying it blind on Instagram.
Hi there, I'm Tom. I'm the owner of this 1960 Plymouth Fury. Funnily enough, I found the car on Instagram of all places, so that was quite a strange transaction to take place over the internet. So yeah, I follow a guy on Instagram and he got it for sale over in the States. So I sent him a message and the rest is history, really. So there's a bit involved with the shipping and things like that. It was a first for me, really. So that was a little bit interesting to do the research and find out exactly how it all works. But if anyone's got any sort of questions about it, happy for you to get in contact with me if you want to ask any questions. I can guide you through it. But yeah, fairly straightforward way to do it, really. So no major hiccups at all. I think it took about 30 days, which was quite quick, really, considering the distance it had covered. So yeah, really pleased with how all that went, and pleased with the car when it arrived as well. I just wanted something with some big fins on it, and that's what I got. Hopefully I can get it out more this year, enjoy it over the summer and take it to some shows. Quite the opposite to what we're used to in the UK of our cars of the 60s.
Now, the first thing for me that I absolutely love about this car, and the thing that caught my eye when I first opened the door, was this amazing steering wheel. Now, you might have noticed that there's a slight break in it. We're going to be completely transparent with you. To get a new one of these, even shipped to somewhere in the US, is $2,500, and that's a lot of money. And Tom said, I'm really happy with how it is, and it's quite original to the car, so he's just going to leave it because it doesn't impinge on the driving experience at all. And it's a really, really nice shape as well. And for any Allegro fans out there, you might notice that it almost resembles that Cortex steering wheel shape. And we come down into this detailing here, and I'm going to press this horn. It's a little bit iffy. So as we look in front of us up here, we've got just a little light up here to tell us whether the battery's charging, and of course our indicators. And across the centre, and this car is like many American cars, it spares nothing on the styling and detailing. In the centre it says Plymouth across here, and if you've ever driven one of those 1100s or AD016s, it's almost running on that ticker tape system that comes up to bring us up to 120 miles per hour there. Here we've got, again, it's very similar to some of the BL stuff of the era, well, BMC BL, where it just kind of rolls round. It's very like that Wolseley that we took round. So that's our fuel gauge. In the centre we've got our clock, and for those of you that like a working clock, I'm really sorry this one isn't working. And then we've got our temperature gauge as well. As well as that, you've got over here, you've got your heater controls, and again it really reminds me actually of my 1960s radiogram at home, because it's got these push buttons which are really nice. And then you've got your little toggle which you move. Now this is really, really stiff. Now as we come down, you've got your radio, and the thing that I absolutely love about this is not only is it original, the buttons spell out hi-fi, which is the cutest thing, and in the centre of that radio console it says Plymouth, and to the right of that we've got our lighter, we've got our ashtray, and then we've got this glove box which Tom's going to open for me because it's super stiff. Now something that did slightly disappoint me on this is we have so much room in the rest of the car, but I feel like we've compromised on that a little bit. You can't get much in there. Now back to what's in front of us, because it felt like when I first got in it we had a lot, but actually when we start getting down to it, it's kind of everything you need but not overdone. So over here we've got our mirrors, you can just tilt that there. You've got our lights, they just operate on a pull system. Then we come into our wipers, and then we come down to the floor. So on the floor, we've got a selection of pedals, which I wanted to show you. We've got exactly as you'd expect, but with this being an auto, we've got the handbrake down there, but then we've got these two buttons. So this one is main beam, and then this one up here is actually, how nifty is this, a wash and wipe button. So it's not actually working at the moment, but when it is in good working order, you just press this and it will wash and wipe the windows. I mean, that is so extra, but also this car is so on brand. Now we've kind of walked you through that, but I wanted to show you something else as well, which I thought was really, really interesting. So this is our rear view mirror, which I can't really see that much in at the moment. I need to adjust it up, but it has a day and a night function, and demonstrating this is a little bit tricky. So I'm just going to flick this around and try and show you how the mirror is tilting from day to night position. And that is just so that you're not dazzled by the car headlights behind you. Now, as well as that, I wanted to talk to you before I show you the auto box. I just wanted to talk to you about this interior, because for me the detailing on it is absolutely superb. From the door cards, where we've got those mad door opening handles, through to the Plymouth logo stamped on the side in this gold finish, it is absolutely unreal. And one of the nice things about it is as well, is you might have noticed that the steering wheel was gold and glittery, but as well as that, the piping on these seats is gold and glittery. I mean, is there anything this car hasn't got? Because I am so overwhelmed by it. It's absolutely amazing. Now that we've had a bit of a look at that, I wanted to show you the auto box. So it's really, really bizarre. It's a little bit like that heater in that it's these push buttons. So it's dead simple for us to drive. So it's currently in neutral, so I'm going to pop that into drive. And we do have to push the buttons quite hard. Go into drive, to first, second, and reverse. pop that back into neutral. So that for me seems like a pretty straightforward way for us to be driving. Now I know many of you have probably watched this video because you want to hear what's going on under the bonnet. So let's get this car started up. Honestly, it is incredible. Look, I'm not going to lie to you, I was in love with it straight away as soon as I heard it. So I'm going to start it up for you so you can hear it, but don't worry, we're going to shoot it from the back as well so you can hear what it sounds like if you are an unlucky car behind us and not a lucky passenger inside. So I'm going to give that a bit of a rev for you because that is when it truly comes to life, because on tick over it's reasonably quiet, but wait till I put my foot down. That is amazing. Let's go and shoot it from the back. Now I'm going to put my foot down so you can hear what it sounds like. Now when we're driving this, we're really having to second guess what other road users are doing and think ahead, because although the size of the car and although we've got that 5.2 litre engine under the bonnet, we are still on drum brakes. Now, there might be bigger drum brakes because we're in a bigger car, but they are still drum brakes. So it means that if you are in a modern car, you'll be on discs. And so the braking in this is a lot more laboured. It takes quite a bit to get it to stop. So for me, that's really one of my big considerations whilst I'm driving it. Now, whilst it's kind of one of those cars that is quite easy to drive because you've got those buttons over here for that automatic transmission unit, it is a slightly bizarre drive because these giant wheels and giant tyres mean it almost feels like you're trying to navigate a boat round. So as we drive along, we've really got that atomic space age feel to the car. We've got those fins on the back which were designed to help when the car was driving along and harsh winds were coming across. It was said to stabilise the car, but I mean, look at the size of the car, it can stabilise itself. It's just over 17 feet long. But the weirdest thing for me is this steering wheel, because it's that Cortex shaped steering wheel like we saw, well, you will see on some of the earlier Allegros, and was discontinued quite quickly. And it makes steering just a little bit weird as you're going around a roundabout, because you're kind of almost feeding a rectangle through your hands. And for me, it's a little bit of a turn off. But this wheel is actually quite interesting because you can see with all this glitter and all this fancy stuff on, it was actually a steering wheel which was only issued with cars that had power steering. So of course, with the power steering on this car, it's making the driving experience very, very simple. In terms of where it sits and with other cars that we've tested, you'll probably remember when we took that Rolls Royce out that I said to you that the steering felt frustratingly light, like we were driving on ice. I really didn't feel like I had much control of the car. And this is along those veins, but at the same time, it feels a lot more manageable and it doesn't feel quite as light, although it is very, very responsive. And you're constantly kind of correcting yourself, which is a little bit weird. The other thing that's weird with this as well is because I'm sat on this side of the car and not that side of the car, I'm constantly having to think about where I am and my lane positioning. So Tom's given me a bit of a reference point and he said you want to be about a drain's width away from the curb to make sure that you're not stepping over that white line or impeding the other drivers on the road. With, of course, this car being a car that was never sold in the UK, parts aren't readily available. However, everything can be shipped in from the US and is largely available over there. With this being a car that was only produced for 1 year, there are body panels and parts that really aren't something you can get, and the four-door saloon, as it would be, was the less desirable model, so there's obviously less doors. And of course, you've got a bit of an American car scene over here. Well, I say a bit, it's a massive thing. And you've got swap meets attached to those, so you can go to those and get bits. And it's got a really good community behind it. So whilst these cars were only made for a year, it does fit into that American car community, which is massive over here. Now, the other thing, of course, is the automatic transmission unit, which is called the Torque Flight transmission unit, I believe. A lot of flight and airplane references in here, actually. And it moves quite smoothly through all the gears. I don't feel like we're lacking when we put our foot down, so I'm just going to put it down. So if you listen, it catches up with us quite quickly. I know that there's a few knocks and squeaks and rattles inside, which you would expect of a car of this era. It's very, very quick and it's very, very nice to drive. It's just that lane positioning which keeps catching me off guard. By the way, it's also worth mentioning that the windscreen is much higher to give you greater visibility, and you haven't got that many blind spots either. So whilst this is a massive car, it's relatively easy to drive because you've got these wing mirrors, you've got this rear mirror, and you've got all-round visibility as well, which is great. The only drawback is to this car is it's kind of thirsty. So it's doing around 13 miles per gallon, which would not be something that I would be able to be putting into the daily commute. So if you're in America where petrol, or as you guys call it, gas is cheaper, you could probably drive this a lot more. But in the UK, it's really going to impede you from using it every single day. But my God, what an amazing car it is. I mean, just everything right down to that glitter piping on the seats, the beautiful fabric that it's been trimmed in, which PS Tom has had retrimmed, but it's the same as it should have been at the factory. Down to the glittery steering wheel, everything about this car to me is exceptional, and it's a real experience. And I think that's why people get into these American cars, because you look at something of this era in the UK and it's completely worlds apart. And when people say that Americans and English speak the same language but it's like two different worlds, they might as well be talking about the cars as well, because there was really nothing like this for the average man in the UK in 1960. It is unreal. To get something of this quality in the UK in 1960, you would have had to been spending a lot more than your American counterparts, which is partially as well because in America, of course, you kind of need a car. It's not like in the UK where you can rely largely on public transport and we have all sorts of things. In America, the car really is king. And you know what? If I was driving in America, I would definitely buy one of these. So we've had a really, really great test today. I've had so much fun showing you this car, and it's been brilliant to introduce American cars to the channel because it's been something that everybody's asked for, I've not been able to achieve, and yet today I think I've made my own dreams come true, and I hope I've put a smile on your face too. So thank you very much, Tom, for lending me this car, because I know it's a labour of love and I know it's your pride and joy. So thank you so, so much. It's been such an amazing day, even though it's kind of grey outside. So wherever you are in the world, I hope you've been having a great week. And until next time, take care and drive safely.